sight you've ever seen. Creeps from all four corners of the globe. It's time to face your fears and come face to face with the bearded lady, the chicken geek, the fish girl, and the rat girl. And let's not forget the creepy sisters. Watch it. Look at them. Just staring at you, judging you. To them, you are all pathetic freaks for their entertainment. Well, it's time to give them a show to die for. Oh, and folks, the price of admission, your life.
Hey guys, finally Nola here, back at it again with another HHN video. Today I'm going to be discussing the event this year as a whole. After being extremely disappointed with Horror Nights in 2021, I was really hoping that Universal would give us an amazing event next year. 2021 was just absolutely horrid. Only 6 mazes, most of them was stuff we've already seen before. One of the brand new attractions ended up being so painfully mid, scare zones felt borderline non-existent, and the entire event in general was a little too COVID friendly for my liking. But I'm not here to talk about the past, I'm here to talk about the now, present, or whatever you want to call it. Universal started construction for HHN on February, and announcement season began in May, which for me personally gave me the impression that they must have been cooking up something really good for us. Fast forward to September 8th, and Universal opened their gates for Halloween Horror Nights, which included 8 houses, 3 main scare zones with other mini scare zone interactions, and the Tram featuring us and Nope. So in this video, I'm going to be ranking the houses from worst to best, discuss my thoughts about the Tram, and talk about any other miscellaneous thoughts involving this year's event. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Number 8.
Kicking this ranking off is my number 8, my least favorite house of the year. And what house might that be, you may ask? Well, for me, it's none other than Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The Killer Clowns maze in 2019 is one of my all-time favorites, so it is absolutely devastating for me to put this at the bottom of my ranking. I usually don't care very much for repeat mazes to begin with because they always end up being the exact same thing as the previous version. This one was no exception, yet somehow it was slightly worse. Honestly, the only thing that they changed up was the layout. They literally just flipped it the other side, like it's literally mirrored. When you first walk in, right off the bat, things seemed off. The colors weren't as bright and vibrant as last time, and the whole house overall was just missing that magic that the 2019 maze had. But oddly enough, that's not even the worst part. Killer Clowns got progressively worse with every walkthrough that I had. They got rid of the giant balloon, which I'm guessing a guest must have tampered with it, which kinda sucks, but I kid you not, at one point they replaced it with a slightly deflated beach ball that someone drew red squiggly lines on. It looked so bad, it was kind of embarrassing. Also, the scene where Officer Mooney fell off, instead of Jumbo having his hand on Mooney's back like in the movie, he has it on his neck, and as a fan of the movie that kinda irked me. In the last Killer Clowns maze, in the Cotton Candy Cocoon room, they had actual scare actors pretending to be cocoon bodies, but this year they didn't have any of that, which is kinda lame. I remember one night I walked through this maze and then the clown riding on the invisible car was literally slipping off, which looks so funny. I was hoping it would get better throughout the run, but like I said, it ended up getting worse and worse instead. And even where the house was built is kinda awful. They placed it right behind the Transformers rider, which in itself is kind of an awkward spot. In order to get inside the line, you had to walk down a downward slope, which is low-key kind of potentially dangerous for people with bad balance or drunk guests. And the line queue is actually inside of the front lot of the Universal Movie Studio, so technically guests are stepping into private property. So say for example you want to get out of line for whatever reason, you can't go outside the barricades or else you'll get in trouble. You will literally have to walk the opposite direction in line, which is honestly very annoying and inconvenient. So I hope they never make a house in that location again. The best thing I can compare Killer Clowns to is a Disney live-action remake. It's essentially a carbon copy of the original, but without any of that fun and magic the original version had. So yeah, other than some of the clown actors being awesome and having a lot of fun, The house itself gets a big thumbs down from me.
Number 7.
Next up is my number 7, my second to least favorite, which is The Horrors of Blumhouse featuring Freaky and the Black Phone. This one was aight, but on a more serious note, I had little to no expectations for this one, but in a lot of ways, it actually did surprise me. I honestly wasn't expecting much from the Freaky section, but I honestly quite enjoyed it. A lot, actually. It hit all the right notes in my opinion. It had a lot of the cool kill scenes, the actors were really good, they really played their parts really well. But yeah, there's not much else I can say about it. I mean, it's cool, it's fun, it's a cute little recreation of the movie. However, I was very disappointed in the Black Phone segment. I walked out of the whole house feeling very underwhelmed, and it was mostly due to the weaker second half. I just thought it was missing a lot of key components from that movie. I think if I didn't watch the movie beforehand, I would have been so confused while walking through this. It's not a very good adaptation of the actual movie. I don't think there's much else to say about Horrors of Blumhouse. It's just a house that's just kind of there. You know, it's just there to fill up an empty slot in the maze lineup. So yeah, that's just sitting comfortably in my number 7.
Number 6.
Speaking of houses that are just there, my number 6 is going to be one of Universal Hollywood's original houses, and that is Universal Horror Hotel. I was actually really excited for this one. When I first heard the story about it, it was so cool, it was very interesting. I was hoping the whole house would give off major like Tower of Terror, Hollywood Tower Hotel vibes. But unfortunately, instead it gave off, we lost the rights to a movie, so we had to do a last minute replacement, but we can't afford another IP, so we're just going to make up an original story vibes. I think my main overall issue with Horror Hotel was that it felt very disjointed. It was just a display of spooky stuff going on. You walk into a bathroom, then you walk into a bunch of hallways, and then you walk into a random hotel room, and the scares are like super far away, so they're not very intense or hard-hitting. And then you walk into more hallways with random newspaper clippings and posters and pictures. It was just simply a whole lot of nothing. That's the best way I could describe it, just a whole lot of nothing. And like I said, it didn't give off old Hollywood vibes like I thought it would. And that's mostly due to the sets. They built some of the most boring looking hotel rooms that you can ever think of. But I guess Hotel does have some redeeming qualities that's preventing itself from being at the bottom of the list. I still stand by that the story is interesting and somewhat easy to understand. Unless you had Express, therefore missing all of the queue videos in the regular queue. And I really did like the creature designs, it reminded me a lot of 13 Ghosts. So overall, much like Horrors of Blumhouse, Horror Hotel was such a nothing house, like it was just simply there.
Number 5.
My number 5 is actually pretty interesting for me. It went all the way up and down my list throughout the entire event, but now that the year is almost over, I think I could confidently put this one at my number 5. And that house is going to be Halloween. I honestly had little to no expectations for this one, mostly because we've seen Michael Myers 1,000 times at Horror Nights before, but this one genuinely surprised me. It was very reminiscent of the one in 2015, which was honestly one of my all-time favorite mazes. But what's cool about this one is that all the issues that I had with the 2015 version were fixed in this house. For example, the hedge scene in this version was a lot better because they used actual shrubbery as opposed to cheap wallpaper like last time. They also did this really cool effect that I thought was pretty neat. I guess they used like small fans to blow on the bed sheets, so it gave you the illusion that you were really outdoors with a real Halloween breeze. Also, they added one of the main characters in the whole series, Laurie Strode. And in the 2015 maze, they tried to recreate the closet scene, but it was just a bunch of black walls, whereas in this one, they actually have clothes. Wow, who would have thought? So because Halloween was such a welcome surprise, I at one point had this on my top 3, but ultimately I had to put this on my number 5, mostly because I just get that feeling of deja vu. There can only be so many times where you have Michael Myers popping out in the suburban neighborhood here and there, and then at the end you have a bunch of Michael Myers in a mirror maze just scaring you, not knowing which one's real and which one's fake. We've all seen it before. But nonetheless, I still had fun with this one.
Number 4.
We're halfway there, y'all. My number 4 is Universal Monsters Legends Collide. The first Universal Monsters maze in 2018 was a masterpiece, just a straight up S-tier maze. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman back in 2019 was yet another 11 out of 10 maze. And say what you want about 2021 and that monstrosity of an event, but The Bride of Frankenstein was yet another 10 out of 10 house. It was amazing. So has John already been 4 out of 4 with Universal Monsters mazes? Yes, but I wouldn't really consider this one a masterpiece. Now don't get me wrong, this is still a really solid house, I really enjoyed it, but there was just something missing. I think my main overall problem with this house is the story. It is way too convoluted for its own good. I mean, the set pieces are gorgeous, just like any other Universal Monsters maze. The actors are always awesome, the special effects are always awesome, the music is always on point. But while I'm admiring everything on face value, when I really dig into it, I just can't help but be so confused. From what I personally gathered, I know 3 of the main monsters are trying to steal this amulet because they believe they've suffered from some kind of curse and they think the amulet will lift their curse, which is like, okay, whatever. But who is this High Priest character and what's his involvement of the story? And why are Dracula's brides here? I thought they all died in Bride of Frankenstein Lives. And then Anubis just shows up for some whatever reason. And then that's the end. Like, okay, sure. But at the end of the day, it's just another Universal Monsters house, which I really don't mind. I always have fun with those mazes. If they could bring the Universal Monsters every single year, back to back at HHN, I honestly wouldn't complain, like, at all. As long as Universal keeps them up to par with the previous mazes, of course. So yeah, Legends Collide sits comfortably right in the middle.
Number 3.
My number 3 is yet another interesting one, and it's gonna be The Weeknd, After Hours Nightmare. Quick little backstory before I get into the actual house. I love The Weeknd. He's one of my all-time favorite artists. But when rumors started rolling around back in March saying that The Weeknd is gonna be at Halloween Horror Nights, I legit laughed out loud. I thought to myself, Universal would never stoop that low. But then The Weeknd kind of low-key confirmed it in his Twitter account, and then that's when I started getting a little apprehensive. And then came the final official announcement, and I just got a little aneurysm, not gonna lie. Because when I think of music that belongs in Halloween Horror Nights, I think hard rock, you know, twisted metal, you know, dark heavy metal, not. I'm a virgin. So yeah, for a very long while, I was very anti-Weeknd, but I thought to myself, you know what, let's give this a chance, let's be a little optimistic about this. So I'm standing in line, waiting for the maze to open, just thinking to myself, like, this is not gonna be scary, this is gonna be like so weird. But I'm not gonna lie, once Blinding Lights started playing in the line queue, I legit got goosebumps. And I was like, okay, I'm starting to get a little hype now. And then I ended up really liking it. It wasn't very scary, but it was really awesome. Weeknd was located inside Soundstage 29, and honestly, I felt like this was the only maze where it made really good use out of that soundstage. The sets were really big, and the house itself felt like it was never gonna end. It starts off exactly what you would expect from a Weeknd house, you know, just live recreations of some of his like most intense music videos. But then during the second half, it gets a little weirder, and then it gets a lot more trippy, kind of like a psychedelic nightmare from like a weird indie horror movie. And I actually really like the use of the music in here. It's not like, oh, something scary is happening and Blinding Lights just so happens to be playing in the background. No, they take samples of like some of his After Hours music and even a little bit of his Dawn FM music too, and they kind of distort it and it kind of adds to that atmosphere. But if I really had to nitpick, there's only one big issue that I have with this one, and it's a pretty big one too. It was just not scary, like at all whatsoever. I'll go ahead and say this right now. This did not feel like a traditional Halloween Horror Nights house. To some people that may be a good thing, others it may be a bad thing. For me, I'm kind of mixed on that. But overall, I really enjoyed this house. I liked how ambitious and experimental it was, and for the most part, they pulled it off really well. It's just, again, I just wish it was a little more scary. I never really found myself crying running out of the house. But I guess you can say I saved my tears for another day. Huh?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Number 2.
Number 2, my second favorite house of 2022, and that is La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. This was actually my first La Llorona experience. I never went to the mazes in 2011 or 2012, so I was really excited to check this one out finally. A lot of old school veterans said that the first couple houses were some of the greatest that Horror Nights has ever made, so I had really high expectations for this one. And I gotta say, it did not disappoint. It was so amazing. A lot of fans say that HHN nowadays is nowhere near as good as it was when it first started. But after experiencing La Llorona, I could totally understand that point of view. Whether I agree or not is debatable, but I totally get where they're coming from. Because this house is more or less the same thing as the ones in 2011 and 2012, but because of that, this house in particular stands out from the rest of the maze lineup because it's just so different. You could tell it was an old school Horror Nights maze. And what I mean by saying old school Horror Nights, I'm referring to a time where Universal wasn't afraid to not hold back. They weren't afraid of displaying dead baby corpses floating in the river. They weren't afraid of showing live children getting eaten alive by giant monsters. So now I totally get it when people say, oh, they don't make them like they used to anymore. Because in a way, they're kind of right. Because mazes like La Llorona were made during a time where Universal wasn't too worried about shocking people, which is the whole point of Halloween Horror Nights, to shock people. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the highest rated house in the guest surveys. So maybe Llorona being successful gives Universal that push to do more intense houses in the future. But that's gonna be the end of my boomer rant. Now I can go into detail as to why this house works so well. I was in love with the whole aesthetic of the house. It was so creepy and eerie. I also loved the whole look of Llorona herself. I thought she was really cool looking. I'm also a really big fan of the scares here. They don't just have Llorona popping out of a dark corner for every single scare. That would be kind of repetitive. But they have like different forms of Llorona, and they also have like dead children and living statues scaring you. I love the variety, it's really cool. And there's one aspect in Horror Nights houses that I always find to be overlooked, and that's the sound design. The creative team always knocks it out of the park for the most part when it comes to creating the sound design for the houses, and this house in particular was no exception. The creepy ghost music and the spooky noises just makes the atmosphere better than it already is. So yeah, La Llorona, the Weeping Woman, was good, but not quite as good as my number one.
Number one.
Number one. My favorite house of Halloween Horror Nights 2022, and if you guys haven't guessed it already, it's Scarecrow The Reaping. A lot of people were really excited for this one when it was announced in Midsummer Scream, myself included. Fans of Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando said that this was one of the scariest houses that they've ever experienced when it was over there. So the fact that a house like that was coming over to Hollywood is what really excited me personally. And I kid you not, this is probably one of the greatest mazes that John Murdy and his team have ever designed for Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood. I'm struggling to find a single flaw in this house or just anything about it in particular that I would personally change. I guess if it were up to me, I would have made the maze a little longer, but that's only because I want to see more of this world and more of this story. So the fact that my only complaint is that I wanted more of it just goes to show you how perfect this house was. I'm telling you guys, they acted like the rent was due when they made Scarecrow. First of all, I love that this is an original concept. I'm always an advocate for more original houses at Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood. But then I thought to myself, Universal Horror Hotel is also original, so how come that house didn't work for me whereas Scarecrow did? Well, for starters, let's compare the scares. All the scares in Horror Hotel were super far away from the guests and they were just like super spaced out and it just wasn't like very scary. Whereas the ones in Scarecrow, they get real close to you and they're like so like close to each other too, so it's just like non-stop triple scares in every corner that you walk in. The set design was also really nice. I'm a huge fan of houses that tell their story visually. The main story of this house is that it's set during the Great Depression and there's the Dust Bowl going on outside and then there's scarecrows coming to life to like reclaim their land and like kill a bunch of people. But unlike Horror Hotel and Universal Monsters, I was able to understand the story because of the visuals and the props and the set design. I also really liked how gory this house was. I'm noticing a trend where a lot of Horror Nights houses these days are getting a lot more cleaner. I mean, yes, you have your occasional like violence and blood and like decapitated people, but then like I can't remember the last time we had a maze where there was like hanging dead bodies and like the occasional body bags that we had to push out of the way in order to get through the end of the maze. But in this one, you have dead bodies where like their eyes are gouged out and like there's like corn shoved in people's like skulls and stuff, and there's like innards and intestines and entrails like just everywhere displayed in the hallways. And one thing I do need to bring up when it comes to Scarecrow is the scare actors. What really makes or breaks a house is the cast, in all honesty. If your cast consists of actors that just like put little to no energy in their scares and just go, oh, you know, just doing this for the paycheck, the house is going to end up being really boring. Thankfully, that is not the case with Scarecrow. The scare actors were so good in this one. I have mad respect for the Universal scare actors because the job is very physically demanding. So a lot of the time, they pace themselves. They need to take a couple breathers. So it makes sense why not every single scare is like a heart-stopping one. But every single time I walked through Scarecrow, the cast always gave out their 110%. They always gave it their all. So I just want to give a huge shout out to the Scarecrow cast. You guys were awesome. So yeah, Scarecrow is probably like top 5 of all time for me. Maybe even top 3. It was that good. The Terror Tram featuring Nope and Us. I know a lot of people look forward to the Terror Tram every single year, but for me, I'm kind of desensitized to it at this point. It's like, oh look, Bates Motel. Oh look, War of the Worlds plane crash. And then that's the end. Thanks for coming. See you next year. Now don't get me wrong, I always recommend the Terror Tram, especially to first timers, but it's just more of a me thing. Like, I'm not sick of it, but to me, it just feels very repetitive because I've seen this all before. So the overall Terror Tram announcement didn't really excite me. I was just like, oh, Hollywood Harry, again. And honestly, the only thing I was even remotely interested in doing was walking through the Jupiter's Claim set, so I thought, okay, at least there's that going for it this year. Right off the bat, the pre-show video that they play in the tram was just another typical run-of-the-mill, oh, Hollywood Harry's taking over the backlot once again, ooh, get ready for your spooky shenanigans, ooh. So I'm just like, okay, whatever. However, I did enjoy the vintage Halloween aesthetic that they went for this year. You can see it all in the decorations and even in the character designs, so I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And there were even a couple of visual gags that I thought were pretty cool, like for example, the partygoers getting stabbed to death but they don't even realize it because they're so drunk, and even got the DJ getting electrocuted by Hollywood Harry. So I thought okay, this is really cool to see, I like what I'm seeing, but it's not enough for me to enjoy it and go, wow, this is a really good Terror Tram this year. It was just yet another Hollywood Harry Terror Tram with all the same stuff that I've seen before. People getting their throats slit, people getting their faces peeled off. And like I said, I do like a couple of the character designs. They're very cute, they're very Halloween-y. I especially like the Black Cats and the skeleton biker gangs and the Bat Boys. I thought those guys were pretty cool. So yeah, there are some things in the tram that I do really like, but it's just overall, I just didn't really care for it all that much. It was just yet another Hollywood Harry tram. So if this year's tram ended the same way all the other trams did, I would have been very underwhelmed. But thankfully, it didn't end there. Usually after the War of the Worlds plane crash set, you go straight to the tram pickup area. But thankfully, instead, this year, there was a route. A route that took you straight to Jupiter's Claim. But what's cool about that is that it's the actual real movie set that Jordan Peele used for the making of Nope. And even cooler than that is that the Tethered from the movie Us has taken over Jupiter's Claim and is killing all the team members. And even cooler than that, a UFO is lurking around the area. So when it finally arrives and all the power goes out, the Tethered actually look up at the eye of Jean Jacket. And all of that combined just sounds so awesome, and it was really awesome. The Jupiter's Claim area really carried the tram this year. Similar to the Us maze in 2019, the scare actors for the Tethered are always awesome. They really play their parts very well. I'm also a really big fan of the sound design. You know, the Jean Jacket noises just lurking everywhere when all the power goes out, I thought was really awesome and very creepy. So what's the moral of the story this year? Give Hollywood Harry a break. He needs a few years to rest and not show up at the tram at all. So for this part of the video, I'm just going to be talking about stuff that basically isn't the houses or the Terror Tram. Let's talk scare zones first. In my honest opinion, they aren't exactly the greatest this year, but I can really tell that the creative team is really trying to step into the right direction. There were only 3 main scare zones this year, which were Clown Saws, Sideshow Slaughterhouse, and Pueblo del Terror. My complaints about the scare zones this year are pretty much the same complaints that I had about all the other previous scare zones for the past few years. All the scare zones have little to no decor, and even if there is decor, it's usually just dioramas of skeletons and just themed costumes. And then you'll have just Party City strobe lights everywhere, a little bit of fog, and some background music, which is mostly just EDM and dubstep. And yep, that's your average HHN Hollywood scare zone in a nutshell. However, I really did enjoy the more smaller scare zone interactions, like for example, the big giant crow stilt walker. That dude was so awesome. I'm just very impressed that they were able to pull that whole look off with the whole articulated beak and the extended arms and everything. That whole look just came together very beautifully. It was just so well done. I'm also a big fan of the Death Eater scare zone. I thought it was really cool. It really completed the whole dark arcs aesthetic that they were going for in the Hogsmeade section. So yeah, like I said, the scare zones are heading into a right direction, but it's simply not quite there yet. They still need that extra oomph. They still need that extra spice to really make the scare zones truly great. There's also one thing that I need to mention in regards to 2022. Crowds this year have been the worst that they've ever been in Halloween Horror Nights. I understand the event is getting more and more popular every single year, therefore more and more people are trying to check out Halloween Horror Nights, but I kid you not, almost every single night that the event was running, it was all sold out, and crowds were really bad. I want to say a good 25,000 per night. Yeah, it was that bad. Now don't get me wrong, 3-hour waits, 3.5-hour waits for mazes isn't something out of the ordinary. But for every single night, even Wednesdays, to be super jam-packed, that's really saying something. I personally feel like something needs to be done with the ticket distribution, or maybe not sell as much express tickets, because express is part of the problem as to why people wait such long lines for mazes. One last little thing that I need to ramble about before I end the video. I miss the backlot. They really need to bring back the backlot. I miss it so much. I miss walking through the toxic tunnel, then walking through the movie sets and seeing all the mazes and stuff. It was just so cool. I really miss that era of Horror Nights. That little parking structure area where Scarecrow and Halloween was is not it. Like, the route to go over there, the walk over there, is just so boring. Like, there's no toxic tunnel to walk through, so like it's very uninteresting. So any Universal higher ups watching this video, please do me a favor, bring back the backlot. Thank you. And that's just about it. Overall, Halloween Horror Nights 2022 was really solid. I really enjoyed myself. I had lots of fun this year. There were a couple things here and there that I personally didn't care for very much, but I'll take what I can get, especially after last year. This year was way better than last year, just like light years better. I know it sounded like I did a lot of quote-unquote constructive criticism, but at the end of the day, like, that doesn't really matter. Like, as long as I'm there, as long as the vibes are like rocking, then I'm rocking. Like, I'm always having a blast at Horror Nights, no matter the quality. If you stuck around to the very end of this video, thank you. If you like what you saw, feel free to hit that subscribe button and the like button. And also, what did you think of Horror Nights 2022? Let me know in the comments down below. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until then, see you all in the fog.